Hello, BookTube. This is the Scarlet Gentleman here with my latest book report. I just finished reading this. The Cthulhu Casebooks of Sherlock Holmes, The Shadwell Shadows by James Lovegrove. I came across this in a Books-A-Million up in a town 15 minutes north of me, maybe about 20 miles or so. Needed a really good old-fashioned bookstore crawl last week, and this was one of the titles I picked up. And gotta say, I dove into it because, who doesn't like reading some Sherlock Holmes? And to be honest, I'm not 100% conversant with my Sherlock Holmes canon, nor am I 100% conversant with my Lovecraft lore. But James Lovegrove does a great job in melding the two cosmologies together, I guess you could say. Watson comes back from Afghanistan with the British military. He's got a hole in his shoulder, and he's psychologically traumatized, and he doesn't want to acknowledge exactly what happened there, because what happened there was way outside the realm of human, quote-unquote, rationality. And that's heavy on his mind when we first meet him, and he crosses paths with Sherlock Holmes during one of his cases, which in turn leads to a case that involves some Cthulhu worship, some worship of the elder gods, which Lovecraft wrote extensively about in his own works of fiction. And I have to say, the two styles melded pretty well. There's a certain conceit here, where James Lovegrove, way at the beginning of the introduction, puts himself in the story where he received from Dr. Watson. He heard about James H.P. Lovecraft's granddad received manuscripts from Watson about the hidden cases of Sherlock Holmes, and James Lovegrove was contacted by a colleague in England, and hence we get the first of what we thought was a trilogy. He said it was a trilogy. Come to find out, there's a fourth book coming out in September, which I'll be happy to read. But to be honest, this was a lot of fun to read, especially if you like both authors. If you've read Sherlock Holmes but don't know about Lovecraft, it won't ruin it for you. You basically have to accept the fact that supernatural cosmic forces exist, and which is outside the purview of Holmes' rationality and rules of deduction. This reminded me, there's an anthology called Shadows Over Baker Street, which I read about a decade ago, that also has a story in it that involves Watson coming back from Afghanistan with some kind of evil, awful thing that happened to him there. I remember that had a different take on it. I'm going to reread it again. I have it on my e-reader. I just received it in print form in the mail yesterday, so I'm going to sit back and enjoy that short story. I would also highly recommend getting Shadows Over Baker Street, because there's a Neil Gaiman story in there. And Neil Gaiman, if that sounds at all familiar, you'll probably remember his name from American Gods, probably one of the great American novels. He's also known for writing Sandman for DC Comics, which I have to admit, back in the day, I had most of the run. But Neil Gaiman, it just seemed like a primer for how to be a goth type thing. But now I kind of want to read it again, because there's lots of good stories in there. It got turned into a Netflix TV show a couple years back, and a lot of those stories still held up and still retain the truth of what you read on the page. But yeah, if you like Sherlock Holmes, or if you like Sherlock Holmes or H.P. Lovecraft, please give this a read. It was very enjoyable. I'm going to clean my palate with some other reading and then order up the other books eventually. My book trolley is groaning under the weight, so I've got to put a dent in it. So, hope you folks are well. Happy reading. Speak to you soon.